I think it's gonna be a little delayed on YouTube. So
it should not be. Perfect. Yes, it worked. We are online.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on our webinar. Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks as well for taking time to our panelists. We are Paul and Magda from Balkan, and we will try to moderate today. And we also invited for the webinar because as Balkan, we follow up for a long time, like the situation along the Serbian and Romanian border. And we observe as well the regulative changes and the consequences for the people on the move in Serbia. But we also observe that here in Germany, for example, there's just a little tension in the media. So we thought it would be good to organize a webinar today to listen and to discuss as well with experts from the ground. And we would like to introduce you our panelists now first. And then they will give us a little input about the situation on the ground. And afterwards, we also would like to invite all of you to ask questions in the live chat, and then we will read them and we can discuss and exactly. But because I guess we could talk about this topic forever, but we decided that the webinar will finish latest after 1.5 hours, so latest at 8:30. So Paul will introduce our panelists now.
Yeah, so first of all, welcome to Milica Svabic. She's a lawyer and activist from Serbia. With her NGO Click Active, she's doing individual case assistance and advocates for the rights of people on the move and draws attention to the asylum system and its systematic problems, both in Serbia and in the European Union. So thank you very much for coming. Yeah, obviously she will give us the insight about Serbia. And next we would like to introduce Iloni Loga Flavius. Ilioni, sorry. No, I messed it up. Yeah, he's a journalist and coordinator of the Romanian NGO Logs. For many years, Logs has been providing support for people on the move in Timișoara, a town in Romania close to the Serbian border, and they provide food, wash, and laundry facilities, as well as integrative activities. So that will be our input on the Romanian side. Thank you also very much for coming, Flavius. And last but not least, we would like to welcome Marta Stojic-Mitrovic, who is a researcher and expert in the field of critical migrations and border regime studies. She currently works at the Serbian Academy of Science and Arts, and it's my personal pleasure that she's here today, because just 2 days ago I submitted a paper where she was like half the sources. So it's very nice to have you here. Yeah, well, we start?
Yes. As Paul already said, we would like to start with you, Milica, and we would like to ask you if you could give us like an overview about the current situation for people on the move in Serbia. And also we know that you recently published a report about the situation along the Serbian and Romanian border together with ProAsyl. And we would like to ask you if you could present us some of your main findings of this report.
Yes, of course. Hello, everybody. Thank you for organizing this webinar and for making this platform of sharing experiences and presenting the situation on the field. So my name is Milica Svabic. As you already said, I work for an NGO Click Active. It's a Serbian-based NGO that provides free legal and psychosocial support to people on the move and asylum seekers in Serbia. We are based in Belgrade, but we visit all of the north or exiting borders from Serbia. In general, Serbia is the final non-EU country on the Balkan refugee route. It has 3 borders with the EU, which are at the same time EU external borders. So it has a border with Croatia, Hungary, and Romania. Today, we will mostly speak about the situation at the border between Serbia and Romania. So this border became more active in the summer 2020 after the state of emergency, which was imposed due to the COVID outbreak. During the state of emergency, the refugees and people on the move in Serbia were under the complete lockdown in the camps, which then started slowly to be released in May and then completely lifted over in June 2020. And around that time, we started seeing significantly larger number of people in this border trying to cross. This border, of course, was active before, but not in such large numbers. There were times where people were trying to cross it, and then the focus was shifted on the border with Hungary and Croatia more. At first, mostly people from Arabic countries tried to cross this border. It was mostly people from higher middle class who had more money in order to pay the smugglers and to cross this border quite effectively. So people usually stayed just a couple of days in Serbia. However, because of the large influx and large number of people, the Romanian border police increased its presence on this border, and very soon we started seeing pushbacks. At first, the pushbacks were not as violent as we were used to on the other borders, on the borders with Hungary and Croatia, but then also this slowly started to change. As you already mentioned, we did publish the report with the ProAsyl, which is available on our webpage. So maybe we can also share the link in the chat to the report, where we analyzed the practice of the Romanian police in the period of 1 year. We collected, unfortunately, hundreds of testimonies of the pushbacks. Alongside with the Romanian border police who was conducting these pushbacks, we also collected testimonies of Frontex presence at the Romanian border, as well as some informal groups that seems to be collaborating with the Romanian border police. So it was a group of civilians who were usually wear all black clothes with the masks. The border police was present, but these people did not have any uniform or any symbols on their clothes that would suggest to which group they belong to. The pushbacks were started to be quite violent, especially during the last year, during 2021. It included a lot of physical injuries, a lot of humiliation acts where people were dressed naked and then forced to go back, or to go back without their shoes during the winter in snow. Also that they would be discouraged from trying to cross the border again. Slowly the number of people also started to, in general, the number of people present in Serbia was increasing, and it still is increasing. According to the official numbers of Frontex, they say that only in the first 3 months of this year, they recorded more than 40,000 illegal border crossing points just on the Balkan refugee route. This is also what we see on the field. There is more and more informal squats, more and more people in the camp. According to the official numbers, in the last year, there was around 60,000 people in the camps. But there is also a very high number of people who are not visible to the Serbian system, who are staying in the squat, in the private accommodation run by smugglers, private hostels. So the number of actual people who are here is much, much bigger than these 60,000. However, in the last couple of, let's say, maybe 6 months, there is much bigger focus on crossing into the Hungarian border because of the high-scale violence done by the Romanian police, but also because there were more and more cases of readmission. So Serbia has a readmission agreement with Romania. And during the last year, we collected several cases with material proof. So at the moment we are preparing the report on these cases that hopefully will be published in a couple of weeks latest, where there seems to be a cooperation between Romanian and Serbian authorities, where Romanian authorities are legally readmitting people back to Serbia based on this agreement. We collected cases of people who entered Romania, tried to apply for asylum, or they were caught by the Romanian police, and then they were taken to detention center and legally deported back to Serbia. So with travel document, with authorities issued by the Romanian authorities, and they were returned legally at the official border crossing points and handed over to the Serbian police. We also collected testimonies and proof of cases of Dublin returns. So people who entered Romania several months ago from Serbia, left their fingerprints there, and then continued toward other countries of the EU. And then they were deported back to Romania based on Dublin directive, and then based on the readmission agreement, they were deported back from Romania to Serbia. These deportations based on readmission agreement are legal ones. However, the problem is that people don't have access to asylum once they're deported back to Serbia. So Serbian government takes them in, but then gives them the cancellation of stay, which enables them to apply for asylum or to have any kind of rights and legal residency here in Serbia. Because of this is also one of the reasons why people decided to go to other borders, especially to Hungary, because they know that there is a possibility that they will leave the fingerprints in Romania, that they will be deported back, and then eventually they will end up again in Serbia after several months and after they make the whole round across the Europe. So that's some general overview of the situation that is happening on this border. I will leave now the floor to Flavio and to Marta, and then later we can come back to the questions.
Thank you a lot, Milica. And now we would like to ask you, Flavius, if you could maybe give us an overview about the current situation for people on the move in Romania and about the development in the recent years.
Okay, hello, greetings from Timișoara. Thank you for having me. I have just some, just a few numbers that I will share with you. So just bear with me to manage to share my screen with you. There you go. I will just share with you a bit about the migration situation in Romania, our perspective, and what Logs is doing. And then maybe I will also address some of the, what Milica was sharing with us about the special agreement that Romania has with Serbia and how it works. So we are in the western side of the country. We are in the city of Timișoara, which is more close to Budapest than to Bucharest, our capital city. And as you can see, we are very close to Serbia, which makes it for the people trying to cross to Romania, it's on the way where they will end up. In Romania, we have 6 asylum camps, and one is in Timișoara, and the other ones are around the border. And we are the main asylum camp in the southern western side of the country. So everyone coming from Serbia and even Bulgaria, they will end up in Timișoara for a moment. Romania usually had around 2,000, 3,000 asylum cases, except 2017. But in 2020 and 2021, we had the triple number of asylum requests, still small compared to, to Germany or other countries. But nevertheless, this is a huge increase. In 2021, we had close to 10,000 asylum applications. And this has led to high pressure on the government, on the camps. Just imagine that in the beginning of 2021, we had around 1,200 beds in all the camps in the country, in all the 6 camps. So there was a huge pressure on the camps for where people to stay and how people were processed. And I will show you in a second where that led. In 2021, I mean, half of the asylum requests were from Afghanistan, which was a huge increase. Usually we had Syria and Iraq as the main origin country, but Afghanistan was almost half of the asylum applications. And interesting enough, most of the applications were registered in Timișoara, and that because of the geographical site, we are where people will come. Every month we had high numbers of asylum applications from Afghanistan, and then we end up having people on the streets in squads. Timișoara has never seen people in abandoned buildings. It's a different situation than Serbia or Bosnia, but nevertheless, people will find abandoned buildings where they would stay, and police will go over and try to kick them out. And then we started offering food and food voucher distribution. And then in March, we also start taking people to hostels and just providing them showers and just try a bit to help. Just keep in mind this number, from the 4,000, a little bit more than 4,000 asylum applications from Afghanistan, in 2021, 182 Afghans were given asylum in Romania. And it seems a high number, but just consider that 137 Afghans from the total number of 182, they were rescued and brought in Romania after August events in Kabul. So this lets 45 Afghans who were granted refugee status in Romania out of 4,000 people. So it's a 1% admission rate, which makes it very unappealing for Afghans to stay for the procedure, because they know that they will not be granted asylum. So there is a vicious circle where people are not being granted asylum, and then they will not stay for the asylum procedure because they will not be given asylum given asylum in Romania. Because of the overcrowding of the camps, unfortunately, the NGOs that were supposed to give legal advice or social advice, none of them had doubled their number of employees. So basically, all the big NGOs, they have offered the same assistance with the same number of people, which of course led to less people being individually assisted. That's our understanding from here, from Timișoara. So even if most of the people would have an asylum case, they will not know how to say their story or how to explain it. Now, regarding Ukraine, we all know that the word refugee, it's perceived now very positive when it comes to Ukrainian people, and it's a reason of joy for us. But of course, the Ukrainian refugees, as we all know, they are not seen the same as the Afghan refugees, for example. We are using this platform to speak about, all refugees are refugees, and they should have equal treatment and equal rights. But it's a great thing that so many people are helping Ukrainians. Romania had close to 800,000 people crossing into the country, and around 80,000 people are still in Romania. What we are doing in Timișoara now, we've been asked by the municipality, because we have quite a positive image in Timișoara, even if we did fight sometimes with the police, but maybe less and more culturally appropriate our fightings with the police. We were asked by the municipality to coordinate a center, a unique and innovative center where the city, the municipality, the social services, they accepted LOG's coordination, and we came together and we're offering all the assistance in one place. And people are being offered free accommodation. I mean, we have so many apartments that we can give to Ukrainians, which is great. Again, we have funding, that we can offer, vouchers, and we can offer a lot of help. But in the same time, we have not stopped working with Afghans and Pakistani people and Indian people. And we are seeing a decrease of people crossing into in Timișoara. That's our understanding. But again, we do not have the latest data on how many people really entered. But we're seeing a change in the nationalities. We're seeing less Afghans. We're seeing more Indians, more Pakistani people crossing in, and the admission rate for Indians is even less, I think, than 1% than for Afghans. So there is not a lot of chances for them to get asylum. I will be very open for questions if I can answer them a little bit later. Just to mention something that was previously stated. The NGOs in Romania, there is not a strong evaluation or monitoring of the border. We're trying to be as diplomatic as we can. We're working close with the government. We're working close also with the border police. Nevertheless, we are perceived as maybe the most rebellious organization working with migrants, interestingly, and that's because all the other organizations, they do not pay attention to vulnerabilities or police brutality. We've been documenting some in the summer, but then we had to stop because we just couldn't do it. We didn't have enough staff, and we just have to focus on humanitarian help. There is also press documentation of police brutality at the border. The border police denies it. Again, we do not get, and I think this is the same as in Serbia and maybe Bosnia, we do not have people who want to testify or make an official complaint of police brutality. So in that case, it's always only allegations, and the police will always deny them. We have been very forward, and we've been always talking that we will support any person who like to do an official complaint, because we know it happens. But now with lower and lower people coming into the country, or again, as we perceive it, then we get less and less complaints. In 2021, there was no official complaints against police brutality. They were only documented by us, and we've been sending them to UNHCR. We've been some of them we've been also reporting to the police for future investigation, but it was not a main situation. Again, the Romanian police is perceived, because if you compare them to other countries, brutality was perceived many times by the migrants as being very nice and maybe chasing them away, but not hitting them. We've done in March last year, we've done a focus group, and it was funny that most of the people will say, yeah, but they're very nice if you compare them to other, neighbor police from Bosnia or Serbia. Thank you very much for having me, and I would be very happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you very, very much, first of all. I would have a follow-up question right now. So you said you don't have this evidence of police brutality, but do you have any other idea why the numbers of people crossing into Romania are going down? Or would you have a guess, maybe?
We haven't been able, especially in the last 2 months, where we just doubled our activities, and everything has been so crazy with the Ukrainian crisis. We haven't been really searching into the reasons. My understanding was that also in Bosnia and Serbia, there is a decrease of people landing on Greece and then moving forward. I'm not really sure if that's the case. I can't really say if there is a direct connection between police approach at the border and the decrease of number of people. But I did understood from some discussions that, for example, more and more people are not considering crossing into Romania. You just look at the geography. You're crossing into Romania, but then you still have to cross in Hungary. Yes, there is no wall between Romania and Hungary, but the crossing is not easy. And then I think most of the people just focus crossing directly in Hungary if they are planning to do that. So that's a bit of my understanding, but again, it can be very wrong.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have a question in the chat already, but we're going to save that for later. So first of all, Marta, my question to you was, now that we've listened to the impressions from Serbia and Romania, what would you think, how can these testimonies kind of be categorized into broader observations about the context of the European and Serbian migration policies in the recent years? Like, are there any grander trends that you see in these specific examples?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this very interesting panel. What is happening on the border between Romania and Serbia is just one small segment of development of European migration policy, which is becoming more openly, more visibly brutal and securitarian for several decades. So year after year, it has become violence becomes one of most visible characteristics. The violence itself is not only physical. People are beaten, but also, as Milica has mentioned, and also Ilioni, that people are prevented from entering asylum system, which is the only open door for legalization of stay and access to rights. So people are excluded from rights that other people do, even though asylum as such is basic human right. Also what we can see as violence is pushing people back through abusing some legal actions such as readmission agreements or Dublin. It is also violence because people are turned back irrespective of what they will face in the countries to which they turn back, whether they will have access to rights and so on. Also, closing off borders and making crossing more difficult is pushing people to searching new routes. So we have from these two presentations, we have already seen that people are always trying to find new routes, how they will, which will enable them to reach the destination which they wanted. Case of Romania and Serbia is just one of many. So those closed borders are appearing, some are becoming more permeable, some more difficult to cross, and people are just moving, trying to find a way to continue their movement, and also maybe sometimes they give up and are forced to move back. So all these types of violence, like encamping people, keeping them immobile for prolonged periods of time, which has happened, for example, in Serbia during state of emergency of Corona time, but it is just becoming a new normal. It is also a violence which is inflicted on people on the move. Physical violence is totally normalized. People who are trying to cross border are expecting that they will be beaten, that they will be robbed by police, that everything will be used against them, and they to prevent them from reaching the space, so the country which they wanted. Also violence conducted by different policing authorities is again becoming something that is part of common knowledge that it is happening. So we have seen, usually police is of course denying that they are conducting violence toward people on the move. But we have seen in the example of Croatia, that is the last one, that there is a lot of documented violence that actually only politicians can deny, but cannot prove that it is not happening. The violence is not only a deterrence to make people on the move afraid of trying to move forward, but it is also a political statement with having a population that is allowed to be beaten, to be robbed, to be pushed, to be curtailed of any humanity is exactly dehumanization, and it is a big political statement, racist, which is saying that some people are less than the others, and also it makes the question of abuse of authority a huge one and visible. Escaping violence, escaping pressures from something that is happening in countries of origin is considered a valid claim for asylum. But what is happening with violence, which is conducted on people when they leave their countries of origin, why cannot they be protected from that? Asylum system, asylum procedures are only focusing on like what made people leave their countries of origin, but what is happening with them is stayed totally untouched. So also to turn back to what Ileana was telling, how a year ago the situation with Romanian police brutality was quite differently perceived by people on the move. Actually, they were comparing with the other police units in other countries in a way that Romanian police was seen as less brutal, as nice. This is again changing. We also had, for example, during 2015, whole visual presentation of, for example, Croatian police officers that were hugging children or I don't know, helping people, smiling and so on, and the situation radically changing a couple of years later. So this is again something that is a consequence of political transformation, of making securitarian type of policy as a dominant one in comparison to a very brief humanitarian perspective that was dominating in 2015. It lasted only for a couple of months, actually. This securitarian trend, increase of securitarian trend, is something that has been going on for years, and all those different agreements with the states which are not part of the European Union, including readmission, allowing, for example, foreign European Union member states police officers to conduct control or to do policing outside the European Union, and also for Frontex to work there, to receive big funding for different types of increase of technical stuff like cameras, different digital items which can help non-European police officers conduct better control and so on. And also teaching people increasingly, police of the non-European states, how to implement ways of conduct and how to prevent people from reaching European Union and adopting them back. That is something that has been happening for really for decades already, and it is part and parcel of international policy outreach of European Union to non-European states. So, and also just one small comment, a short comment about numbers. So, as Milica has mentioned, it is very difficult to tell how many people are here. People are moving. For example, the same person can be one day in Bosnia, the other in Serbia, try to cross to Romania, fail, turn back to Serbia, and then try to go to Croatia or whatever. So Frontex is publishing numbers of border crossings, not of people who try to cross the border. So one and the same person can try several times to cross the border. And also people who try to get to the asylum system represent just a small portion of people who are moving around. This also makes speculations and also manipulation with numbers something which is very useful tool for direct policies to divert money flows, also to solve some cases, pressures and so on, how it is framed in a political discourse. So I will stop with this. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. That was a lot of information. I do have a question that kind of speaks to the justification of these actions that are taken by EU and non-EU states. So technically, all of those countries are democracies that have to be justify themselves in front of the people. How do these countries morally find a way to justify using violence and stripping people of their rights and all that good stuff? How is that possible? You already mentioned the securitarian approach and that some politicians just plainly deny it, but obviously there is stuff going on. How do you think that is being justified by the countries?
Well, this situation with Ukraine really showed rooted racism, which is shaping European policy and practices toward migration. So people who are coming from countries outside the Europe, which are so people who are not blonde Christians and so on, very briefly said. When racism allows for dehumanization, so when people are dehumanized, all what is not allowed to inflict on other populations is allowed to inflict on them. That is a kind of a process that has been happening in the past too many times, and it is also visible now. This is a very complex question. It is social, cultural, political, and so on. But usually, what we see that there are some very concrete interests behind everything. It is usually political dominance, money, and extraction of goods and so on. So if you take rights from people, you really can do with them much more than if they are protected by certain sets of rights. So it is something that is unfortunately happening a lot and repeating from history to now.
Thank you a lot. We would also now like to welcome everyone who's watching to ask questions in the live chat. There are already a few questions, and to follow up, sorry Marta that now it's again a question for you, but maybe it's still like around this topic. There was a question about the role, which role does political and economic relation with EU plays in the agreements for migration to control with Serbia. Maybe you can give us an answer on this, and maybe otherwise Milica as well.
Yeah, that tendency to put migration control inside the agreement, different types of agreements, trade agreements, economic agreements, whatever, is something that can be followed since the end of the 90s, actually. So Serbia and the other countries in what is now Western Balkans have been included into this European border regime, like officially, since the beginning of the stabilization and association process. That was political process when these states were helped by the EU in economic and political terms to make peace after years of mutual conflicts, with the promise that they will become a part of the European Union. And in that process, they are adopting institutional and legislative changes and are becoming wheels in the machinery of European border regime. So first it was, they were, in order to, for example, for Serbian citizens to get, to become able to travel into European Union without visas, to get a visa, it is a lengthy and costly process. And you don't know whether you will get it in the end. So in order to get visa liberalization, Serbia and other Western Balkan states had to change not only legislation and institutions, but also, for example, passports, how they look like, and so on, and also to make readmission agreements with the European Union and asylum systems, which are complementary to the one which is in the European Union. So it is a kind of, and they will be helped financially and politically and with the trainings and advice by the European Union. So it is something that has been happening really for years. And especially in situation when countries are impoverished, and for example, in 2013, Serbia had that employment ban introduced, meaning that people cannot be employed in the state sector, any kind of institution, without really some special needs and approval and so on. Arrival of money from European Union in 2015 was really welcomed. So people could join different, even state organizations, to project funding. There is, I really don't know the numbers now, how much money has European Union injected into Serbia, not only to Serbia, but also to Bosnia in recent years. It is something, the money which goes for different practices for migration control, but it is always all this help is framed as European Union is helping, Serbia and other Western Balkan states, not that they are kind of made to accept the money and to conduct migration control for the European Union. So practically, what is happening here, what is interesting for me is that dissolvement of territory of a state. For example, Serbia is controlling movement of people toward the EU, not what is happening that much in Serbia where people are. Also, they're keeping people inside the camps or pulling them from the border for the European Union. So Serbian police structures are conducting job for the sake of European Union. So it is a very interesting dissolvement what is happening of territory, of institutions. Asylum system is not made to, I don't know why. Maybe Milica can explain better why asylum system as such is in place, because it is not doing what it is made for, to give people protection status and so on. It is used for something completely different, to shorten legal stay, and I don't know, it was actually something that Serbia had to adopt to become one step further in the European negotiation process, one step closer to the European Union. So it is all, these migration changes are not directed to helping the state somehow manage migration and new people who are coming, how to make them into the part of society, how to make them part of the economic system and so on. It is just instrument for getting in closer getting closer connections with the European Union and more entangled into European institutions and so on. So this is briefly about this thing.
Is it okay if I add just something?
Yes,
so in June last year, Frontex started its operations here in Serbia. Serbian government welcomed first Frontex officers who are employed at the Serbian-Bulgarian border, at the Serbian side. And on that occasion, Minister of the Interior Affairs of Serbia, Mr. Vulin, he said he was there to welcome them, and then he said this is an excellent agreement for both sides, because every migrant that is stopped in Serbia is one migrant less in Berlin or Vienna. So this very much shows the intention of Serbia. As Marta said, our government received a lot of money from EU with this narrative of stopping illegal migrations, of being a guardian, being the wall, the buffer zone for the EU, and also being a dumping zone with these readmission agreements that we see are happening not only with Romania, but now also with Hungary. So Serbia is very much willing to prevent people from going towards the EU, but it's also more than willing, as we see, to receive people back from the EU. However, on the other side, just like all the other countries in Europe, our government and Serbia are also not willing to integrate people and to give them access to asylum system, to the rights that they would have as asylum seekers, and eventually to integrate them into Serbian society. Here we also hear the same narrative like there is in all the other countries. We don't want people of different race, of different religion, who will come and change the way of our life, change our habits, change the outlooks of our cities, and so on. So then on one side, Serbia is willing to act as a buffer and dumping zone for the EU, but then on the other side, it's not willing to keep people here. So then they don't allow people access to asylum. People live in these transit overcrowded camps with really horrible conditions, or they're forced to live outside of the camp in these squats. They're not informed about the rights that they have here and the possibilities of applying for asylum, because also Serbian government, like all the other governments, doesn't want people here. So this is the way how people are in this limbo and in this circle of being stuck in Serbia, but then also Serbian system forces them to go to other countries because there is nothing for them here. Then they go, but then they're being readmitted back to Serbia, and then again they are illegally here, and then they again have to go and cross the border. So now we see a lot of these back and forward movements on the Balkans that are constantly happening. Also, I would just like to add what Marta said in her first speech. People on the move really do normalize the violence now. Very often when we ask them, when we see people who have just been pushed back, and we ask them, okay, how was the police? And this is happening with all the police, the Croatian, the Hungarian, and the Romanian one. And very often they say, oh, everything was fine. And we ask them, okay, they didn't beat you? And they were like, oh, no, they do beat us, but they beat us all the time. So that is fine, that is not a problem. And they really do see this as a necessary step. They have been beaten on the border between Turkey and Greece. They've been beaten on the Greek islands. They suffered violence when they crossed through Macedonia, through Albania, through Serbia. They've been pushed back from all three borders back into Serbia. And the violence is something that they know that has to happen. Also, it's they are quite fed up with telling these same stories, explaining the pushbacks. They simply don't see the purpose of this, because every time when we are taking the testimonies and we talk with them about the pushbacks and the violence, every time we are asked, okay, what's the purpose of this? This is already the third, the fifth, the 10th time that we are saying this, that we are explaining this, but we don't see any changes. What can you do? You are an organization, you're a lawyer, can't you go to, and then they always see further countries of the EU as a rays of hope, as somebody who is actually welcoming them, and that Croatia, Hungary, and Romania are the bad cops, that this is the national strategy of these countries who doesn't want them and who are then pushing them back, but that in fact, further countries of the EU are very much welcoming. And then we always have this question, oh, but can't you go with this testimony and this report to Germany, to Brussels, to France, and tell them what is happening here and how we are being treated? So unfortunately, there is a lack of real perspective on both sides, not just on the general public in EU, but also on the side of the people on the move.
Okay, thank you very much. On this topic, just in the other country we have here, in Romania, we have the question in the chat to Flavius. What are perceptions of Romanian civil society and people on the move? And what are official, in quotations, governmental responses? And I guess to add to that, maybe you can share your experience if you also heard what Milica just told us about the people on the move themselves just internalizing this violence as necessary. Do you also have the same experience? Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Now, in around 2015, 2016, when the last sociological research was made, more than 60 to 70% were not agreeing with refugees, Syrian refugees, Muslim refugees, Arab refugees coming to the country. Romania is quite traditional at its, roots. We're still a traditional country. Nevertheless, what we have seen in Timișoara, we have seen a change in the narrative towards the refugees, and we take pride in, understanding that maybe a little bit we were part of that, because we have spoken to the, traditional cores of Romanians when it comes to helping refugees. We had this narrative where we always talk about kindness, which is also a religious, ability, or how do I say, like a religious capacity to be kind towards others, even if you don't understand them. And this was very well perceived in the local society. So in Timișoara in 2021, where we have never seen, you have never seen 50, 40 Afghans staying near the train station and just, staying there all day. That was such a frightening image for many people of Timișoara, and maybe not that much frightened, but unusual. But still, we haven't seen in 2021 any racist event or people being abused on the streets. And we have nationalist group as well, and we have very strong and very traditional groups as well. But I think what happened in Timișoara was that more people understood that, the people who are on the way, who are on the move, who are trying to find safety, they're very much like Romanians who are all over Europe. So we've always talked about, this need to be kind with, with people on the move and migrants and refugees. And I think it worked quite well. And I think the society is developing, but we obviously still have strong nationalist view among the society. There is strong indirect discrimination. We do not see protests in Romania. We do not see, people throwing stones at someone wearing hijab or things like that. But we do see indirect discrimination, which means when we're trying to find accommodation for someone from, with Arab origin, people will be reluctant and they will rather have a Romanian or, something else, or a European. But again, my perception, I've been working for 10 years with asylum seekers, is that things are improving and people are more and more open and tolerant towards refugees. And I'm talking about Arab refugees or, Asian refugees and African refugees, because again, towards Ukrainians, people were just, everyone opened their house. I mean, it was crazy how many people just went to the border to pick up Ukrainians and take them in their house. So things are evolving. We're still having more to learn and more to learn about tolerance and inclusion for refugees, but I think we're on a good path. Now, keep in mind that I come from Timișoara, which is on the western side of the country. We're more close to Budapest and close to Vienna than to Bucharest. We reach Vienna faster than Bucharest. We don't have good roads. And that has also an impact on the cultural, perspective, and people are more open. And Timișoara is quite a, multicultural city. We have many minorities living together, and we hope that it's becoming more and more intercultural, which means connecting the people, not fighting with the Serbians or not fighting with the, with the Roma people or with Hungarians, but more maybe bringing people together. Now, regarding your second question, I really feel the same. It's not only that people don't trust. I mean, they don't trust that we can change something in being treated not right or abusive, but it's also these people are being victimized again with every small question that we do, and we are a strong opponent of foreigners coming. With logs, for example, we have a lot of foreigner volunteers, but we always speak about, don't go and talk with the people and say, hey, had police beaten you? You don't ask these questions to the people unless we have a trust connection or we really explain why we're doing it. So we are against that. That's why we don't document police brutality anymore, because we don't have the capacity to do it right and to, just talk with the people and say, hey, we're not just here for data. Did they beat you or not? Where did they hit you? Here. Okay, thank you very much. See you tomorrow. It's just, it's profane. It's insulting for the people, traumatic experiences, and it makes them feel it again. That's why, again, we've decided that we do not have the capacity to do it right, and we do not agree with people coming with questionnaires and say, hey, take some bread. Did the police beat you today? Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. But it's obviously something that we should research more in Romania. And not only at the border, but also inside the country, because we know about situations inside the country. There were someone, I don't remember which one. I think Milica was talking about Black people without any identification at the border, which we know that they are from gendarmerie. They are Romanian gendarmerie, which they are, all dressed up, and sometimes they have very small identification tags, but they do not look like policemen. And there has been quite a lot of discussions about gendarmerie working together at the border and also in the country in united squads. Yeah, I don't know if I answered all the question, but I tried a bit.
You actually answered more questions than we asked, because the one about the people in black clothes were the next question that we would have asked anyways. Which one did you want to ask?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, without trying to get very controversial, or again, because we can't really document them and we don't have official complaints. According to the law, these are allegations, and we don't want to get into a controversial area, but there are more, as far as we documented, there are more allegations against the gendarmerie in Timișoara and at the border as well than is towards the border police, which is also very interesting. But then again, we wish we can do more, and we'll see what the future holds. But you have to do this documentation very, very ethically, and also be very careful with it.
Milit, there's a question to you. Like, do you want to add something about what you heard about, like, the people in black, how you called them, and maybe you can explain us as well how you are doing this testimonies, or how you're doing this within your work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started getting the testimonies about these people in black in end of summer last year, and people usually tell us that these people would come when they're being caught by the police, by the border police, usually in the proximity of the border, but of course on the Romanian side of the border. That usually the border police is the one that catches them, that they take away their mobile phone and money and all the other personal belongings. And then, as they say, the police calls somebody on the phone, and 15-20 minutes later, the people in black show up. People on the move tell us that they are coming in the civilian car, so it has civilian car plates. It's not marked with signs, police, or any other letters, any other signs on the car. And they tell us that they are wearing all black. They say it looks like a civilian clothes, so it's not a black uniform. It's black trousers, black shirts, or whatever. They tell us that they didn't see any signs, any markings on the clothes. But if, as Flavian says, if it's something very small, then it's possible that they just didn't notice. And they say that these people are very, very brutal when it comes to violence. Then they would usually beat them quite hard. We met one guy from Syria. He was pushed back a day before we met him. And he told us that the same thing happened. He was caught by the border police, and then these people in black came, and on the day when we met him, so a bit more than 24 hours later, he was still limping because they hit him quite severe in the area of the lower back and upper leg, so he couldn't walk properly. Nothing was broken, luckily, but still the beating was quite serious. So that's mostly what most of the people tell us. We talked with several groups on several occasions, different nationalities, and these are pretty much the same stories. The second question, you asked me how we collect testimonies, right? Yeah, so as I said at the beginning, we visit all of the exiting borders. We are mostly focused, because at the moment, majority of people, vast majority, more than 98% of people who are in Serbia, they don't have access to asylum procedure for many different reasons. So they are either staying in these transit camps that are state-run camps, or they are in informal squats around the north borders. So for that reason, we are at the moment mostly focused on migrations in general, on the pushback, the situation at the border, and so on. We are mostly visiting because we don't have, not just us, but nobody has access to the transit centers that are run by the government on the north. There are very few of these transit centers. They're overcrowded. The situation is quite bad. So the Commissariat for Refugees and Migration usually doesn't give permit to anybody to go inside these camps and work with people there. So then we are focused on the squats where people stay for several days, several weeks, several months. It depends. As Marta said, people are going from one border to another. They try to cross into Romania, and then when they're pushed back, they go and try to cross into Hungary from one point to another. So there is a lot of movements. We see same people on different locations over time. Then they go to Bosnia, then we see them 6 months later again in Serbia. So during these visits, we provide legal and psychosocial support to people, and we also collect testimonies on the pushbacks. It's quite difficult. We do have a form of set questions that we try to follow, but the practice shows that it's quite difficult to collect testimonies simply based on a form that you follow. As I said, very often when we ask them how was the police behaving during the pushback, they say it was fine, and that's it. And then when you ask them, okay, they didn't beat you, and they're like, oh no, they did. So very often our perspective and perspective of the people on the move is not the same. You have to ask different questions, something that goes without saying for us is not the case with them. And as I said, people are quite fed up with saying the same story over and over again and experiencing the same stuff over and over again. On some location, people go on a game, they try to cross the border on a daily basis. So pushbacks and violence is something that literally happens to them day to day. A few days ago, we were in Šid at the border with Croatia, and we talked with one group of young guys from Afghanistan. And one guy, we asked him, okay, what's the situation like here? Do you go on a game on a daily basis? And he said a very funny thing. He said, yeah, going on a game is like going to school, except that we are going in the evening. Every night we go and every morning we come back. And that's really the case for them. So they really go on a daily basis. They're being pushed back. So pushbacks and violence is something that's completely normalized to them.
Thank you. And you also mentioned before already that Serbia has signed an agreement with Frontex. So I would love to ask you, like, how is this agreement is taking place, and does Frontex, like the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, play like a role along the Serbian-Romanian border?
Mm-hmm. They are, but on the Romanian side, or at least that's what we hear from people on the move. On a couple of occasions, people told us that there was also Frontex officers who were present on the Romanian territory and that participated in the pushbacks. When we asked them how they know, because they explicitly said Frontex, they used the term first, not us. It was not suggested during the interview by us. And then when we asked them, okay, how do you know that it was Frontex and not Romanian police or somebody else? They told us that they already saw Frontex officers in Greece or in Albania. And we collected testimonies that Frontex was also involved in the pushbacks. When it comes to the agreement between Serbia and Frontex, currently, at least what is officially known, is that Frontex is present only at the border with Bulgaria. They started the first operation in the mid-June last year, 15-16 of June last year. And there was between 40 and 50 standing officers of Frontex present in this area. However, on that occasion, when the first Frontex officers came here, they said that in the coming month they will double the number of the officers who are present in Serbia. I also have to mention that unlike in other countries, unlike Frontex operations in Croatia, Hungary and Romania, where Frontex is involved in pushing people back, according to the testimonies that we collected in Serbia, Frontex doesn't push people back into Bulgaria, so they don't push them back into the EU territory. Instead, they take them to the police station, they register them as asylum seekers, although people don't ask for asylum in Serbia, and then they refer them to the official camps and the official system in here. So there seems that the policy of Frontex here is different, again, keeping Serbia as this dumping buffer zone and trying to keep people here. Of course, we met these people on the north borders, so they did not go to the camp. They did not apply for asylum in Serbia. They tried to cross into the EU and continue towards the Western Europe.
Okay, thank you. Now I would throw the same question at Flavius. Flavius, what is your experience with Frontex in Romania?
I received this question a few months ago about am I aware of Frontex being in Romania or at the Serbian border, and my knowledge at the time was that I'm not aware of anything like that. So now that I learn more about that, it's quite interesting. We haven't seen it in the press, or maybe we haven't looked that much. There were some trainings in Timișoara with other European border police members, but that's what we understood from the press. So I was not aware of, again, I got this question before. I think it was someone from Balkan asked me, and I was not aware of that. So it's quite interesting. And then, again, in the last few months, we did not focus so much on documenting crossovers. So we haven't been aware of that. So it's quite interesting, and I will be looking into it. I'm very curious if the border police and the Romanian authorities made that clear at the border. But you could see it somehow coming, given the numbers, the increasing of the numbers, and probably the perception of the danger at the border. So it could make some sense in that consideration, because again, we had tripled the number of asylum requests in 2021. And then also the numbers of pushbacks, again, legally pushbacks, because according to the law, there is what is called legal pushback. For example, people can be stopped crossing at the border if they haven't touched the Romanian soil. The border police can intercept them and can ask from the Serbian police to come and pick them up. So the number of those legally pushbacks, but again, considered in the law, so considered legally, was around 70,000 pushbacks in 2021, which is a huge increase of people. Now, these pushbacks do not refer to individual numbers. One person could have been not let to enter the country many times than just one. So it could be not the number of the individual people, but it's, again, these are also interesting figures.
Thank you a lot. And now there was a question from this chat, but we would like to ask this question to all of you three. But first to you, Marta. We would like to ask you how you see the future along these borders and along the so-called Balkan route. Yes.
This is a very difficult question to answer. What is now happening with Ukraine is that the visibility of racism toward people on the move is increasing, and that different approach to Ukrainians and to people who are coming from other parts of the world. More politicians are forced to think and to react on those discussions which are happening in public sector. if it hadn't happened with Ukraine, this brutality and increased securitization, dehumanization, and I don't know, pushing people into more desperate situation, illegality, and so on, would only increase. But now, with opening a discussion of differential treatment of people, again, there is a possibility that it will not only go in a very bad direction. What will happen with Balkan states now? Well, migration is a political item which is used to make pressures, political pressures to get money, to direct money to certain states, to certain sectors, and so on. It is very useful thing. So I don't think it will be abandoned just like that as a excuse, as a discourse, as a industry as such. What is really what is now happening in Serbia, for example, is that migration is actually people on the move. Question their access to rights and so on is something that should be thought of in all different sectors of policy. It is called mainstream, to put migration into mainstream, not to have it separate from other realms of social and political and economic life. So we will see what will happen. Again, it is so what I see that migration is only transforming. Actually, reception and discursive framing of migration and so on is transforming, but it is very fertile for a political and economic life. So it will not be abandoned as such. It can be used, and it will probably be used for Balkan states to make political advancement in their strategic goal to become members of the European Union, and also to simply receive more funding from European Union in doing so.
Thank you a lot. Milica, is there something you would like to add? Like, what do you expect, or how do you see the future of the migration policies along the Balkan route?
I completely agree with everything that Marta said. This is something that will definitely be used for Balkan non-EU countries, especially Serbia and Bosnia, as a place where they can score political points with the European Union, but also a place where they can receive a lot of funds for officially accommodation, integration, return of third country nationals. When it comes to the migrations in general, I think that the EU will go even further with the externalization of migrations. This is also something that we see in the proposed new pact on migrations and asylum, where they're saying that they will open these transit camp in non-EU country, and then they will do the cherry picking there. They will go through asylum procedure in these non-EU countries, and then people who are granted asylum, they will legally go to designated EU country, and those who are rejected, they will be returned to the country of origin. So this is where I see both Serbia and Bosnia, and probably other non-EU countries on the Balkan, that they will serve as this kind of a platform and place where people will be kept, and then choose who goes forward and who is being returned back. It's much easier to deport people from non-EU countries because we don't have laws that are in line with EU directives. Serbia now has a very quick deportation procedure in accordance to the law, where people are not even entitled to the legal aid during this procedure. The only thing that is missing for Serbia to do deportation is funds for it, but there is a very big willingness among EU countries to give funds for such actions. So this is definitely something that will happen in the near future. As we see the situation in Africa, in Middle East, in Middle Asia is not improving because of the war, the riots, also climate, poverty. Different situations are forcing people to move. Everybody sees Europe as a place where they should go as a final destination. It's very easy for people to travel. There are very strong smuggling networks, so it's very easy for people to reach Turkey or Libya, and then from there to go towards the European Union. So I don't think that the number of people who are trying to reach Europe will go down in any near future. It just depends how long will they spend in these countries, how many times will they try before they manage to reach Greece or Bulgaria, and how many times will they try before they manage to re-enter EU from Serbia or Bosnia. So this time may prolong, but still people, they will not give up. We don't see so many people going on voluntary returns to the country of origin. They will try over and over again until they manage. So I don't think that this is a long-term solution for anyone.
Thank you a lot. And finally, we would also like to ask this question to you, Flavius. Like, how do you see the future of the migration policies along the Balkan route, maybe as well with your special focus on Romania? What do you expect?
Well, the future will be how we were going to make it. And I think politicians are taking decisions decisions that are based on public support. I mean, politicians will only do as much as the population will agree. So they will respect what also general people think. So when you ask me as a social worker and at the grassroots and just loving to help people and just be there for them and then try to build community support, I think we are having a great opportunity towards Ukrainian crisis. It doesn't sound nice to use word opportunity in the same word with Ukrainian crisis, but I think we can educate the people more. We can talk more about the refugees that we are seeing, and we are feeling so much close to, for example, the genocide that is happening in Mariupol or in Busha. These things are happening in Afghanistan, in Syria, and Iraq, and it has been probably even more worse, and it's continually happening. So we should use this opportunity to speak to the people and try to educate people more towards rather be welcoming and kind. And maybe they don't understand that much who the refugees, I mean, what differences there are, but I think we should educate the people more, because if we get, an inclusive and educated society and more open and more kind, then the politicians will just have to follow somehow. Because, when it comes to European values, the official European values are based on, it's spoken about, being inclusive and being intercultural. But then again, politicians will only get support from what the public do. So I think we should work more on educating the people and just, trying to get support from the community. That's my perspective on grassroots level.
Thank you very much. Well, that was a very optimistic finish, I would say. We are all through with our questions. So I would again like to, or we both would like to again, thank you all for coming, and maybe say a little last goodbye round. So I would just throw it right back to you, Flavius. Maybe you can also speak a little bit about how people can support logs while you say a nice little goodbye.
Well, we can't do anything. I mean, excitement doesn't pay gas, and the cars do not run on excitement and passion. They run on money. So if anyone wants to financially support us, we are more than happy to do it. we get, I mean, we're getting financing from, from more organizations because of the Ukraine crisis. But if you want to help on a small scale, just do it. Just support this small grassroots organization. Donate to big organizations, but also donate to small organizations. We need people's support. And we're looking for volunteers. We are running on, on voluntary based. I mean, we were able to build what we manage in Timișoara because of that. So if you're interested in volunteering with us, just find us on Facebook or Instagram and send us a message. We can chat from there. Thank you very much for having me. Greetings from Timișoara.
Thank you very much. We as Balkan will definitely try to adapt that. Thank you also, Marta, for coming out. Any last words you want to say?
I just want to thank you for organizing this panel and putting these very important questions and topics forward. And I hope that overall situation will change in better, because otherwise we're really going to a very dark place. Okay, thank you.
That was the opposite to what the optimistic stuff that Flavio said. Now we are balanced out again. Very good. So Milica, actually, just right now we also got another question in chat, and you have 3 words to answer. No, I'm kidding. But maybe you can answer it really quickly. Is there any chance to bring all the cases of pushbacks we have collected to any court, for example, the Humanitarian Human Rights Court, or discussing it in the UN Human Rights Council? And also, you can also say a couple words and how people can support ClickActive.
Yeah. When it comes to bringing these cases to national courts or European Court of Human Rights, there has been several such cases from different countries. The problem is that you need material proof of pushbacks, and that is relatively hard to get. There are also deadlines that has to be respected, which are relatively short. So it's really not easy to bring any case of pushbacks to the court. You cannot collect all of the testimonies and cases together and bring them to court. So you need to go case by case. And there is a quite big logistics, and simply the lack of material proof is the biggest problem in these cases. There have been, as I said, there has been cases from all countries. One of the cases that has been in the media quite often is the case of Medina Husseini, a little girl from Afghanistan who died during the pushback from Croatia back to Serbia in 2017. This case now has a final decision from the European Court of Human Rights saying that Croatia did violate basic human rights of the family and of the little Medina. However, although the European Court made this positive decision, it's still left to see if there will be any changes in the policies of the Croatian government. Also, until today, there are no individual consequences for the police officers who were conducting these pushbacks. There seems that this is also the problem in all the countries. There is a lack of individual responsibility of the police officers. And this is also one of the reasons why police officers are willing to take part in the pushbacks, because they know that they will not be personally held responsible no matter what happens. So even a 6-year-old girl can die and nobody will have any responsibility or any consequences because of it. There were also cases in Serbia of the pushback. In December 2020, there was a decision from the Constitutional Court of Serbia on one case of pushback, where several families from Afghanistan were pushed back from Serbia to Bulgaria. This was also a positive decision, saying that Serbia did violate their rights. They were registered as asylum seekers in Serbia, and still they were pushed back to Bulgaria. So there are individual cases that are happening, but as I said, it's quite difficult to collect all the proof and all fulfill all the conditions to take cases to court. They're also taking a while. So the case of Medina, it happened in 2017, and only a few weeks ago there was a final decision. So in 2020, that's 5 years. So these things are quite slow. As a final words, I would like to be positive. I would like to conclude on a positive note, but yeah, unfortunately, I don't see any positive aspects. Yeah, but we can definitely hope for some small victories, for small steps and small changes on the field, and then hopefully a lot of small changes will make some bigger changes on the field.
Thank you a lot, and thanks again to all of you three panelists and giving us all this interesting input. And yes, we will try as Balkan try to still write and post information about the situation, and we'll try to continue like this. But again, thanks to you three, and thanks for all the people listening and asking questions and taking part of the webinar. I think we are now at the end, and yes, we will also link to logs and to Click Active, so everyone who's watching now can find this projects.
And the recording is going to go up onto the YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
Very good.
All right. Thank you, and have a good evening all together.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Ciao.
Bye bye.